at the 8 mm mark. Now release the rear arm to lock the fiber in place. Momentarily press down on the cleaving arm to scribe the fiber. Only light pressure is needed. Be sure the cleaving arm is raised before proceeding. Hold the fiber and bend the tongue to cleave the fiber. It is important to remember not to bend the tongue more than 45 degrees, or damage to the tool will result. The fiber is held in the holder until it is discarded. Once the fiber is cleaved, be careful not to touch it or contaminate it. Insert the cable into the spring-loaded end of the cable holder, pulling the fiber tip up to the edge of the cable holder. Insert the fiber into the connector until it bottoms on the fiber stub in the connector. The mark on the fiber will enter the connector body as an indication that the fiber is inserted far enough. The cable should be bowed so that the bow touches the cable holder in the center. Now you are ready to crimp the assembly. There are 4 crimp operations. Close the crimp tool 3 clicks. Insert the connector into the nose of the die set in the direction of the arrow. Snug up the crimp tool on the connector so that you can release your hand from the cable and cable holder. With both hands, slowly squeeze the tool closed until the ratchet releases. Remove the connector from the crimp tool. Be very careful not to pull on or otherwise disturb the fiber. Doing so could pull the fiber away from the stub, causing higher insertion loss and lower performance. Next, insert the connector into the smallest hex cavity of the tool. The shoulder of the plunger should be against the cavity. Squeeze the handles until the die's bottom and the ratchet releases. Reinstall the ferrule dust cover. Slide the crimp eyelet back along the cable to release the strength members. Spread the strength members evenly up over the connector body. Then slide the eyelet over the strength members. The eyelet should bottom against the connector body. Place the large end of the eyelet in the largest hex cavity of the tool. Squeeze the handles to crimp the eyelet. Gently push the cable jacket in toward the crimp eyelet. Position the small end of the eyelet in the middle hex cavity and crimp it in place. Release the cable from the rear of the cable holder. Now slide the boot up over the rear of the connector until it presses into place. You're done. Let's look at the procedure for Light Crimp Plus SC connectors with jacketed cable. It is essentially the same as for ST connectors. Remove the front and rear dust covers, saving the front dust cover to protect the ferrule after the termination. Place the connector into the holder with the ferrule facing outward. Slide the strain relief boot over the cable and out of the way. On the area of the cable holder marked Cable, mark the jacket at the 2 molded slots. Use the jacket stripping tool to cut the jacket at both marks. Remove the end segment. Trim the strength member and remove the second segment of jacket. Fold back the strength members and slide the crimp eyelet over the jacket and strength members. Position the eyelet flush with the end of the jacket. Slide the inner eyelet onto the buffered fiber, small end first, pushing it back under the strength member. Using the area of the holder labeled Buffer, mark the fiber at the 2 molded slots. Strip the buffer from the first mark. You may need to make 3 to 4 passes in order to not break the fiber. Clean the fiber with an alcohol wipe. Open the cleave tool and insert the fiber so that the buffer end is on the 8 mm mark. Now release the rear arm to lock the fiber in place. Hold the buffer area down firmly in the beaver tail groove to ensure the fiber is perpendicular to the cleave blade. Momentarily press down the cleave arm to scribe the fiber. Gentle pressure is all that is required, as excessive force will create an uneven cleave. Bend the tongue to break the fiber cleanly. It is important to remember not to bend the tongue more than 45 degrees, or damage to the tool will result. The fiber is held in the holder until it is discarded. Remember not to touch or contaminate the fiber before you insert it in the connector. Insert the cable into the cable holder, pulling the fiber tip up to the edge of the cable holder. Insert the fiber into the connector until it bottoms on the fiber stub in the connector. The mark on the fiber will enter the connector body as an indication that the fiber is inserted far enough. Make sure you have a generous bow in the cable so that the bow touches the cable holder in the center. You are now ready to crimp the connector. Close the crimp tool 2 clicks. Insert the connector into the nose of the die set in the direction of the arrow. Snug up the crimping tool onto the connector and remove your hand from the cable and cable holder. Slowly squeeze the tool closed until the ratchet releases. Reinstall the ferrule dust cover. Next, insert the connector into the hex cavity of the tool. The shoulder of the plunger should be against the cavity. Squeeze the handles until the die's bottom and the ratchet releases. Remove the connector from the crimping tool. Slide the crimp eyelet back along the cable to release the strength members. Fan out the strength members evenly. Then slide the eyelet over the strength members. The eyelet should bottom against the connector body. Gently push the cable in toward the crimp eyelet. Place the large end of the eyelet in the stepped cavity of the tool in the direction of the arrow. Squeeze the handles to crimp the eyelet. Do not yet remove the connector from the holder. Release the cable from the spring-loaded clamp and slide the boot up over the rear of the connector until it presses into place. Now remove the connector from the holder. The angled side of the connector should line up with the angled slots on the housing. Install the connector into the outer housing and push it in until it snaps into place. You're done. You have now seen how fast and easy it is to terminate a fiber optic cable with the AMP Light Crimp Plus connector. By carefully following the procedures shown here and included in AMP instruction sheets, you will be able to achieve consistently high-performance terminations. But remember, proper procedures are important. Because the fiber forms a splice with the factory-installed fiber stub that is pre-terminated in the connector, you must ensure accurate measurements and stripping dimensions. And make sure the fiber is fully butted against the stub. If you're not sure these conditions are met, start over with a new section of cable. We highly recommend that you check the quality of your terminations, especially when doing practice terminations. Use either power meters or an OTDR to make sure the connector performs within acceptable limits. If so, then you can be confident you're using the proper termination techniques. It only takes a few practice terminations until you're comfortable with the method. And once you are, you'll find the Light Crimp Plus connector is indeed the most productive connector on the market. If for any reason you have difficulties or do not understand any of these instructions, please contact your local AMP office or sales engineer. Happy terminating.